All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and welcome to the Elevated Leadership Information Session. My name is Sandeep, and I use she, her pronouns. I am the Manager of Education here at IntegralOrg, and I will be hosting today's session. So feel free to drop me a note in the chat if you need anything. I am here to help. We will start today's session with a land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that IntegralOrg is based out of Mohkinstsis, which is the Blackfoot name for elbow. This refers to the confluence of the Elbow and Bow rivers that run through Treaty 7 territory. Mohkinstsis is the traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which includes the Siksika, Piikani, Kainai, as well as the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, consisting of the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Métis Nation of Alberta District 5 and 6. Part of what has informed elevated leadership is a shift from a single hero-like leader to leadership as a collective effort, both in the context of leadership within organizations being a team effort and offering leadership development opportunities that recognize the wisdom of cohort and peer-based learning. This notion of collaborative learning and leading is not a novel idea. Rather, Indigenous communities throughout Canada have always looked at leadership as rooted in community. As we reflect on our ways of being and doing, there is a long way to go in addressing the tension between the legal and governance structures that we work within in the nonprofit sector and efforts towards truth and reconciliation. We at IntegralOrg accept our responsibility to work towards reconciling this tension, and we commit to remaining in a position of humility as we consider our history and current reality, knowing that the answers are not clear and easy ones, yet they require all of us to engage. With that, I will turn it over to our facilitators who will walk us through the elevated leadership offering. First, I would like to introduce Mike Grogan. Mike is president and CEO of IntegralOrg. He has worked in the nonprofit sector for over 25 years and is recognized for his ability to inspire nonprofit organizations to tackle complex issues and create sustainable solutions. We also have Leslie Tamegi. Leslie has more than 25 years experience as CEO of diverse organizations and understands firsthand the complex challenges facing leadership, staff, and boards in the nonprofit sector. As we begin today's information session, I will start by asking Leslie and then Mike about why this topic is important to them. So Leslie, why is developing nonprofit leadership important to you?
Thanks, Sandeep. I guess I had an amazing experience. I got to participate in a leadership development program myself. It was almost 15 years ago now. And it really profoundly, I think, impacted my leadership journey. And I used to call it my group therapy, that we got really tight, our cohort. There was about a dozen of us. And I'm still in contact with those folks today. Anytime any one of us need anything, we reach out to each other. Immediately you get responses back. They've just been huge supports to me through my career. And I just see, I was recently involved in recruiting for executive director of a nonprofit. And there just isn't enough strong leaders in our sector. And it really is, I think, starting to become a bit of a crisis for us. So I'm huge believer into investing in leadership development. It doesn't mean you have to be at the top level of your organization, but just developing leadership skills throughout the organization, and so that we have a strong pool of people who will lead our sector going forward. So, and Mike, over to you.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Leslie and Sandeep, for getting us started. Thank you all for joining us. It's a privilege to spend time with folks, and whenever we do that, I always like think it's remarkable that you're interested in this type of offering, which is not for everyone, but it is for everyone, sort of. But that the courage to just step forward and say, I want to do something about my leadership. And for me, leadership in the nonprofit world, I got to change my bio. I keep saying I got 25 years experience for the last 10 years. I probably should update it at some point and do the math. But it has been just an evolving journey for me to understand not just my own leadership, which is a part of this as well, because we're ever done that. we're never done building who we are as leaders. And it doesn't matter, as Leslie say, whether you have a title that says you're a leader or that's the sort of way of your being. So for me, it's been part of the journey through the nonprofit sector for the last few decades at CCBO with Leslie, when we brought in executive directions to that organization, which has now sort of hit, sort of gone off into the wilderness. And you're recognizing that there's very few supports out there for this type of work. I did my master's in leadership at Royal Roads, and for me, that was getting to understand the power of a cohort model. And as Leslie talked about in terms of her own experiences with people that she met in her leadership journey, those people are still people you talk to regularly about, what the ups and downs of life and leadership are. I also recognize that this is, to me, beyond the sort of intellectual fascination. It just is a very, it's a very sort of emotional and spiritual and intellectual and capacity building kind of journey that just winds through so many different parts of life that never ends. And there's ups and downs. There's you never stop learning. So even as we did this last cohort, last year, I think there's probably things that you revisit or go back to and think you thought maybe you had that figured out or knew yourself, and realize that no, there's a whole new layer to delve into. And for me, that is just probably one of the more remarkable parts of working in this sector, is to understand who we are and how we bring who we are to the work that we do, whatever that may look like. So there's a number of pieces to it, but it is a fascinating journey. And for IntegralOrg, it's important as well. So for those of you who don't know, I know some of you perhaps know who we are. So we are a charity nonprofit. That is, the makeup of our organization. The work we do, though, is probably a bit different than some. We are capacity builders, so we don't do frontline services. We do things like this. We do legal and governance and strategy work, and leadership is our newest piece. And it's always been a part of our mandate to do this work. We sort of last 2 years, we've done some research on this and said there's an opportunity here. And we launched our first cohort last year. But our job is to make sure that nonprofits and charities have the knowledge to thrive, flourish, and achieve their missions. We are a capacity builder. We help other organizations do what they do better. And Leslie mentioned this, that leadership is a big part of that. I think we've seen a lot of stresses in this sector. Certainly before COVID, the sector is sometimes defined by stresses, I think, some days. But I think coming out of COVID, we saw there's a bit of a reset here. And the idea of who will lead organizations in whatever role that might be is missing from this sector. And there's just not a lot of places to go to build your own leadership capacity. And so for IntegralOrg, this is, I think, an important piece for us as an organization to build out our suite of programming, but just as importantly for the sector too, to say, where do you start to put some of the intentionality, I guess, around building leaders? And that is very much a part of our work in our organization. So hope this is a good introduction for you today. Hope that what's remarkable is when you start these things, you start to think, well, who are the next people we'll journey with, and the excitement of that, and say, who are you and who are we together and who will we get to know? So today we're going to talk about a few things. We'll talk about who this is for, and it is quite broad, but there are some criteria that way. So we'll walk through that, give you a sense of the modules. And we talk about modules being a day-long training kind of thing. We give the structure, what we talk about, how we could devise these things. We talk about this quite often, about not being a program. That we try to be responsive to the needs of the community. We try to respond to people's concerns. It is very much dialogue based, and you recognize that if you were to join us in Elevated Leadership, this is the only PowerPoint you would see. We did the entire last cohort without a PowerPoint. Terrifying for those of us who like to facilitate with PowerPoints, but it drew us into a community model, which is a different way of doing things. So we don't call it a program. Probably has some aspects of like that, if we're honest about it, but we really do want to make it about you and where your learning journey is and customize that as we move forward. So we'll talk about the modules, we'll talk about what it costs. It might have a bigger, ticket price, but there's some ways to work around that. There's some subsidy money here that's built into this model too, and then how we go through the application process. And in today or be along the way, if you got questions or thoughts, do fire them off either in the chat today or afterwards to Sandeep or myself, whatever you want here. We can sort of answer any questions. So it's our goal in this to journey with you, not to present something to you. That is basically the mandate of what we do. But we like to talk about you. So I like to talk about what you think about leadership. And this is one we could talk about forever. And we will talk about forever if you join us. There'll be at least 5 good modules on it about leadership. But I want you to think about the leaders in your organization or your life, or you as leader. It could be anything like this, not necessarily confined to the role you're in now, but could well be. But what is the one skill, trait, or characteristic that you most admire in a leader? So think about that for a second. I want you to enter that in the chat. which I do need to pull up here to respond to these or to look at these things anyway. But what do you admire in a leader? And this can go a lot of different ways, I would imagine. So if you want to fire some thoughts in the chat, then we shall go from there. Trust. Thank you, Chad. Yeah, I think that is one of the ones that's, I think, probably very fundamental to leadership and hard to build, easy to lose, right? The idea of how do you build that over time? And sometimes it's sort of a nebulous thing. Honesty, integrity, fantastic kind of work that way. There's a fantastic piece of work. I think we did a session last week on leadership, on the leadership challenge. They interview people over the years, like tens and hundreds of thousands of people. What are the traits that rise to the top for leaders? That honesty, that integrity, that strategic ability. Yeah, someone can roll with the punches. Yeah, you got to do that. Right? It's every day you wake up and say, where's the next punch coming from? Smile and nod and take, or you feel the pain. Sometimes rolling isn't just sort of shaking it off. So versatility, fantastic. All kinds of stuff in here. And it's not necessarily each of these is a topic, but they are the heart of who you are as a leader, the heart of what organizations need. And I think that is so important for our sector as we move forward. I'm going to bounce it back to Leslie, I think, here, and to walk us through what kind of this thing called elevated leadership actually looks like.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So it's based on 5 full days of learning, as already been mentioned. So it's roughly a full day a month from October to February. And it's really, as Mike said, it's not a program because there's not a set curriculum. It is responsive content. We have a framework that we're going to work from, and I'll walk through that with you in a minute. But it's not us presenting, it's us identifying questions to wrangle with, topics to put on the table, soliciting those from the participants. It's a very much participatory style of learning. And so, and it ebbs and flows. So we might put a question on the table and then spend an hour and a half on it because people really get into that question. And that's fine. Like, we don't have set times of we're gonna only spend 20 minutes on this question, because it's about what's important to the participants. And most importantly, it is a cohort model. So it's about learning from each other. We talk about the wisdom in the room. And it's about building a community around you of people who are going through leadership journeys as well. And our intent is that you will take those relationships forward far beyond the time that we spend together. But as a cohort model, it means that you're also, you have to participate. So you have to be willing to share what's working for you, share what's not working for you. It does require, a degree of vulnerability. And of course, there is a cone of confidentiality around what happens in our sessions. And so that's something that we very strictly adhere to, is that what's shared in the sessions is absolutely kept confidential. So who it's for? If you're a mid to senior level leader, of course, you need the support of your supervisor, of your board to attend. It's really critical that when you commit to all of the sessions. And that's why you've already got the dates set. Having people drop in and out is really disruptive to the group. And frankly, if you miss a day, you miss a lot, because it builds, every subsequent day kind of builds on the previous work. And as I mentioned, bringing this attitude of, collaboration and openness and being vulnerable and being willing to share and fully participate. We do try to recognize, we do recognize that, people are very busy and they're making a big commitment to this program. So we do try to keep, extra homework and things like that to a minimum. So there won't be, assignments and things like that. But so, we are asking you to commit, and just something to think about. People often say, I don't have time to do this. And it's probably one of the most important investments that you can make is in yourself and your own leadership development. And taking a full day away from your organization, getting away from the distractions, talking with peers about common issues that you're facing, it just is a very unique experience, and it will re-energize you going back into your work. So while it seems like a lot of time to commit to, it's definitely a worthwhile investment. As I mentioned, we've kind of got this framework, and we structured around 3 domains of leadership: leading ourselves, leading our organization, and leading in the broader community. And so we structured it like this, like they're not completely distinct, obviously, but we really do believe that you need to know yourself in order to be a good leader, and you have to be able to lead yourself. And then building on that within the organization. And again, it doesn't mean you have to be the most senior person in the organization. You can lead from a variety of positions within an organization. You can lead up, you can lead down, you can lead across. So we'll explore those concepts. And then our responsibility to lead in the broader community. And, we're trying to move our whole sector forward as well. And so how do we start to have a bigger impact? How do we start to look at systems and, how do we work collaboratively to have, to really have our voices heard when they need to be heard? As I mentioned, there's 5 sessions, 5 full days. So the first one we call Preparing for Takeoff. And it's really about unpacking kind of the whole 5 days. We'll give you an overview. It's a chance for you to start to get to know the people within your cohort. And but we actually start right off the get-go with, talking about leading yourself. Start with that focus. So you're building trust, you're building commitment within the cohort, you're starting to explore different approaches to leadership and laying the foundation. We also have created what we call a personal leadership plan, which is a process of you exploring and working through a variety of reflective questions and exercises to help you identify what your leadership strengths are and where you want to focus going forward. As we move towards then leading within a team and leading within your organization in sessions 2 and 3, we start to look at how do you have influence and leadership, developing your leadership amongst a team and an effective team. We looked at using in the past, we used an assessment called Clifton Strengths that people really found valuable. That was probably one of the most positive feedback areas we found, is that people really got a lot out of using that. And so I anticipate we will use that again. And then moving forward from that into kind of navigating organizational leadership, building the right relationships, understanding stakeholder collaboration, partnerships, how this might help you achieve your goals. And then on the bigger picture, evolving into community leadership. And again, as I mentioned, kind of that systems thinking, looking at complex problems, how you can start to have a greater influence beyond your own job, your own organization. So those are the 5 kind of areas that we will focus on. But again, as we prepare for each day, we have some thoughts, but it's very much determined by what we've seen in the group, what people are interested in talking about, the feedback that we've gotten, where people are at, and then we develop how we're going to spend our time together based on the needs of the group. In terms of return on investment, there's many things I think that you can benefit from this, and it is an investment in yourself. Certainly, your strengths as a leader and becoming more clear about what your strengths are and how you can leverage those. And we work through real situations, so it's not case studies. This is real life. What are you facing? And so you have the opportunity to innovate and collaborate and practice in real time. We'll ask you to think about something that you want to work on, and then next time we get together, we're going to ask you, so how did that go? So there is a level of accountability to the group. So you get to apply, kind of new ways of thinking and strategies about how you want to be a more impactful leader. And of course, building lasting relationships, and this is critical. We just had a note from one of our previous cohort folks, and they said they had just gone to a conference and they ran into some of their fellow cohort participants, and they said it was just so great to see them. And you just have this bond now because you've been through the experience together. And then crafting a personal leadership plan. So we have a workbook that you will have the opportunity to work through and really look at how and where do you want to develop your leadership skills. And, hopefully at the end of the day, you will walk out of there feeling more competent, more confident, be able to inspire others towards a shared vision, creating a workplace culture that helps your organization not just survive, but thrive. Certainly nurturing impactful teams. We'll spend quite a bit of time talking about that. And then navigating change in the org and within your organization, but also in the broader sector. And then lastly, about relationships with other key stakeholders, how you can have influence and impact outside of your organization. So that's kind of the overview. I don't know if any people have any kind of questions at this point in time before we go into kind of the administration piece.
Don't see any comments, so I can jump into this section here.
Sure.
All right, so let's talk about your investment. Elevated Leadership is a $3,995 investment that is eligible for the Canada-Alberta Job Grant. The Job Grant is a government subsidy that supports employers to send their employees to development opportunities like this one. If approved, the government subsidy covers 2/3 of the total cost. So that means your organization's final investment would be around $1,320 for the 5 full days of training. All 24 participants in our first cohort successfully received this subsidy and shared that the application process took about 10 minutes. So it's relatively straightforward. And at the end of the day, we want to make this offering as accessible as possible. So if cost is still a barrier for you, please do reach out to us and we can discuss what other options are available to you. The application process. So there are 2 steps and then a final reimbursement stage if you do go forward with the Canada-Alberta Job Grant. We recommend that you complete the first 2 steps together. So the first step would be applying to Elevated Leadership with IntegralOrg. This can be done through the link on our website, where you will also find the program outline. Direct links to that will be included in the email you'll receive after today's session. So they'll be there for your reference. The application to IntegralOrg is your opportunity to share what your leadership development needs and interests are and how the program can align with those. So once we receive that application, we'll review it and be in touch to set up a meeting with you. After we've met, you will receive an agreement letter, which will confirm your enrollment, and then we will move forward with you as a participant. Your application is not complete without this step, so please don't neglect to take your time to fill out the details here. Again, it's a really great opportunity to share what you're looking for and what your needs are when it comes to leadership development. So, the detail is appreciated. Next, or at the same time, if you're interested in the Canada-Alberta Job Grant, your employer will submit an application on your behalf. All that's required for this process is the program outline, which again is on our website and will be sent to you after this session. Your employer will submit the job grant application through My Alberta Digital ID account, and then you'll receive an email to consent to the application. So please do keep an eye out for this email. The process won't move forward until you have consented to it. That's just a critical piece there. Even though your employer is submitting this job grant for you, you do have to consent to that application. Okay, so after we've met and your job grant approval comes back, you will make a full payment to IntegralOrg. Upon completion of the Elevated Leadership offering, we will provide you with a completion certificate that you will then submit to the job grant folks to begin the reimbursement process. They do have a couple of different options when it comes to reimbursement, and it's outlined all in their application guide, which I'll link in that email after the session as well. But if you do want to chat more, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We can chat and I can walk you through some of the details there. Okay, so here we have a suggested timeline, especially if you are interested in that Canada-Alberta Job Grant. We'll be receiving applications to Elevated Leadership until mid-September. But for those of you interested in the job grant, they do have a 30-day processing time. And so we recommend that you begin your application process as soon as possible to avoid any hiccups. However, the dates indicated here are the cutoff for that Canada-Alberta job grant for you to hear back from them in time. If you have your application to the job grant folks in no later than September 9th, you should hear back from them by October 9th, that 30-day turnaround. And that will give you enough time to then process and make a full payment to IntegralOrg by October 16th, October 19th, I believe, that week. And the program starts the following week. And so just following these steps just ensures that there are no holdups and everything is smooth and streamlined. I know that it may be important for folks to know if they've received the job grant approval before committing to a payment, which is completely understandable. We recognize that agreeing to participate is contingent on that job grant approval. So please don't let waiting for the job grant approval turnaround to get in the way of submitting an application. If you get both of these pieces rolling, you'll avoid, again, any delays. And we completely understand that, you will be waiting for that approval to come back. I am going to pop my contact information on the screen here for you. My role is to support you in this process, and there are a few steps, but once you get the process rolling, it is relatively straightforward. Like I said, the job grant portion takes about 10 minutes to complete, and all 24 participants from our last cohort were able to successfully go through this process and receive the subsidy. But yeah, if you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'll also be emailing you, so you'll have my contact information there as well. Okay,
Just
so
one question.
Mm-hmm.
Question in the chat about where are the sessions?
Yes.
And I think I failed to mention they are all in person.
Mm-hmm. Yep, in
But
Calgary.
where they are in Calgary, yeah. Do we have places booked yet?
We have some ideas, but no confirmations yet. Yes. Okay. So with that, I'll move into the question more, if there are any other questions, or question and answer period here. As folks drop their questions in the chat, I'll look at some that we got at registration. So the first one was, how are participants selected for each cohort? Mike, Leslie, if you want to jump in on that one.
Yeah, I go back to the where question too. We haven't committed to this yet, but it's last time we did half the sessions at Ralph Klein Park, which is Southeast Calgary, and then sort of meeting and interpreting. A brilliant facility. If you've never been to Ralph Klein Park, it's a remarkable facility, which allowed us to sort of use some outdoor space a bit more. And so half were there and half were at a building in Calgary called C Space, which is kind of down in Marda Loop. Again, a kind of creative meeting space. We try to find places that aren't hotel roomish or boardroomish. It is to sort of get the sense of where is a place to have a good dialogue. And both those places work remarkably well for us. So we haven't booked those things yet, but yeah, we're probably leading that way, probably starting and ending at Ralph Klein and maybe 3 in the middle. Not sure. That's probably where we're at. And just to go back to the job grant too, it's a lot of pieces there, but it does work pretty seamlessly. I mean, there's always some glitches, but it's a lot of components. But it also covers travel costs too. So it doesn't just cover tuition, it does cover travel costs as well, if you want to throw that in if you're coming from outside of Calgary. What was the question I was supposed to answer? How are we selecting people? That's a good question. Alphabetically, first come, first serve. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what we get. It's, we do interviews with folks, and they're not designed to be sort of, like a job interview type of thing. That's not really the mentality, is to get a sense of feel. Is this the right place for you? It's a conversation. To get a sense of who you are, what your needs are, what you're looking for. I think some people are looking for very technical skills. I want to know how to manage the finance department or do this. Maybe not be quite it in terms of the technical skills. It's more the leadership or softer skills. So to make sure we're aligned in terms of what we do, I think it is really just make sure and how you might fit in a cohort. And that's hard to assess in an interview or a conversation. But it really is about your goals and do they align with what we're really doing here. It's a clarity. It's basically taking this stuff today and saying, what does this really look like for you? I'm not sure. Leslie, anything else we'd throw in that mix?
Yeah, no, it's not designed to exclude people. It's just designed to make sure, our conversations are designed to make sure that, we're going to meet your needs, and this kind of approach is going to be what you're looking for. So.
Mm-hmm. The other question, Leslie briefly touched on this, in terms of time commitment, if there's any additional readings or activities outside of the 5 days. Just a refresher on that, if you'd like.
Well, for us, there is, but for you, there's not. So yeah, we spent a lot of time outside the sessions doing it. No, I don't think there was much. Sometimes there's an assessment. So the Clifton Strengths Finder, I think we probably do that again. That does take a bit of time, and this is, but you know, it's a tool that's so versatile. You will get that forever and keep it. We did encourage people to connect with each other between if they wanted to. I don't know if that really took off or not, but no, there's not like a lot of homework usually. You know, probably more reflecting and just understanding it. And the reason we spread things out over the 5 months and is to let things sink in. This is, you could do this 5 days back to back and cram it in. That's not the style we like to go with. It's to, how does this really play out in your world? So it's how the seeds we planted, the conversations start to manifest themselves in your work and life beyond the sessions. That's the homework, and then bringing that back to the group. So not a lot outside of this. Yeah.
Question.
Yep, in the chat here we have from Chad. You mentioned 24 in the last cohort. Is that the maximum?
Problem. Yes. Yes, it is.
Yes.
I'm going to say yes. That's a definitive answer for me. And it gets bigger than that. You lose. It gets a little unmanageable. So yeah, I think that's where we'd like to keep it. As you know, 2024 is a nice sweet spot for us, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And a final question. What was your biggest takeaway from the first cohort? I'm also going to stop sharing the screen. Amanda would like for you folks to be a little bit bigger. So that's going to be a change here. There we go.
That's a big change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
But
Thanks, Amanda.
Circling back to, circling back to that question. So what was your biggest takeaway from the first cohort?
Leslie?
We did a wrap-up session at the end of the last day together, and really had people, we told them to think about this ahead of time and had people reflect on kind of what was their biggest aha moment. And what really struck me is how many people said, I thought I needed to be, I thought to be a good leader, I had to look like this, I had to behave like this, I had this specific way of being that I wasn't. And what people talked about is how they learned that they are leaders, and there is such a diversity in leadership and in good leadership, and that we all have the capability of being good leaders. And it was so striking to me that people just kept saying, but I didn't see myself as a leader. And by the end of the session, they could see their leadership strengths, and they had a sense of where they wanted to go to further those skills. And it was quite profound. I thought how many people, that shift in their thinking, that they didn't see themselves as leaders because they thought there was a certain way of being in order to be a good leader, and how that myth was dispelled for them.
I think for me, there's a couple of things that stand out. One is, you know, you sort of think back that 6-month journey, and just to watch like an aha moment for every participant, and coming at different times in different ways, saying that there's just something that resonated or they spoke really clearly to. And to think, and sometimes you're thinking people are sitting back, they're not really playing, and realize there's stuff going on in there. And just those little moments where just think this resonated, or this is a question, or this is something I did differently. And like every one of them, I thought that was quite remarkable to see in so many different ways, like all over the board, they're aha types stuff. But also the depth of the group. I think that probably really stands out to me too. We start with an opening, closing question. They're not just, you know, how's your day? They're a little more designed to make you think about stuff and share. And just how in that first one, you kind of get the responses to, here's how my day is. They're very short and very superficial. Towards the end, it's like, okay, yeah, this is 2 hours. Maybe if I move this thing along a bit more, stop sharing, but maybe not quite that far. But the depth, the trust, and the understanding, and the willingness to share and be vulnerable, to see that emerge over time. It doesn't start right away. It takes time to build that, but I think that it's so palpable. And so the way they were with each other in sharing all their thoughts and insights, that was quite remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree. If I could add, I think the other thing that was really fun to witness or rewarding to see was how excited participants were about the practical tools that they then took back to their teams. And so those ahas were translated to their team environments as well, where they had this learning and awareness of themselves and then went back and said, "Oh, I learned this about this team member, and it's informed how I see and work with my team as a whole." So that was really, really cool. Okay.
No, Pamela put a question in the chat. Probably can't summarize what we did here. We can share some stuff with you, and Sandeep can connect with you to give you the gist of this, the heart of it. There's a recording here. We can probably maybe pass that on. So yeah, it is really just to get the sense of who we are, and if this is something for you, is what this whole session was about. Hopefully not a lecture, but yeah, perhaps a bit of that.
Yep. Yep, exactly. I will send out an email after our session today. You'll get some more information about the job grant, a recording of today's information session. I'll send the outline and everything you need. So I will be in touch soon. Okay. Mike, Leslie, thank you so much.
And thank you all. Thank you all for spending some time with us this morning. It's again a privilege, and we'd love to spend time with you over the next year or so, just to figure out who you are and how we wander this road together.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Take care.